Hello and welcome to this Festival Pro video. Today we're going to take a look at fields. Event organizers spend a lot of time in fields, but today we're going to look at a different type of field. We're going to look at form fields and profile fields and the different ways that they interlink and work in the system. So let's begin by looking at the most common place you will immediately find yourself using fields, and that is on a form. So if I go dashboard forms, and we'll open up, say, the Artist Advanced, and here you can see the form questions are made up of lots of different fields. Now these all do different things. We've got this one here, for example, on site contact details. You can see that this is a contact collect field, and we'll go into this in more detail at another point, but in essence this adds a subcontact to your main contact. So the main contact might be the band and the subcontacts would be the musicians. The different field types that we have when you start to build your forms out, you will find under add new field, and then there's a little drop down here, always begins on counter. This allows a number to be selected via the counter. You'll find if there's also a number field in here that you could use to restrict people just putting in numbers. And a lot of these are quite self-explanatory. Large text boxes, single options lets people choose one thing from a list, or a multiple option, they can choose multiple from a list. I'm sure you're aware of what a checkbox looks like. Some of the more interesting things that are particular to Festival Pro are primary contact fields. Now, every company in the system, be that an artist, a contractor, or a vendor, should have a first name, last name, and email address of, say, the primary contact. Now, if we're sending an auto login form to someone who already exists in the system, these primary contact fields will pre-populate with the data. However, if it's a public form, and under, say, settings, access options here, you've got public form, then everyone who comes through will be a new contact, and that is when you want to make sure that you have your primary contact fields in here. And there's a whole bunch of them. You can add in building, street, organization names, but as I say, the key ones are first name, last name, and email address. Whenever you choose a form field, under the field options will be related questions that will help you utilize that field in a more advanced way. For example, is this a required field? Although you can set that on the form. It's visibility and syncing the data to, and we'll get into that in a moment. And of course, number of entries. This is the number of times the option can be repeated. So if this was set to perhaps specify number 3, they will be able to do 3 file uploads within this one custom field. But specific to file upload, you'll see here is max file size, how much people can upload. And you will find if I go to, say, large text box, the field options here will change the maximum number of characters. So there are field specific options that you will have under this field options section when adding a field to a form. What's important to note about fields is that they do live in 2 places. We have our form data, which is here, the questions people answer on a form. And when they complete in their registration, if we view here, we will see all of the information that they have filled in on the form fields. Now, the contacts themselves also have got profile fields. Now, if I click into Henry Matthews here, these are the things that live in his profile. Now, you most likely won't want everything that you ask for on a form to live in their profile. Their profile will get very busy, but you can sync things across, and we'll get into that again later into this video. However, what that does is allow you to take the answers that they may have given on their form, so in here, and have those live in the profile. Now, this isn't strictly always useful. You might not need their social media information in their profile. You can always go to their form registration and get it from here, and you can export from forms just the same. The times when you definitely do want to sync things across is if you need to mail merge this information at a later point. So if they give you their arrival time and departure time, this might be something you later want to put into some kind of email or into a mail merge. So this is the kind of information that you would sync over into their profile fields perhaps. With the profile fields, if I go to view our artists and click here on the profile fields button, we can see here all the different fields that are currently exist in the platform that you can save data against. So accommodation, name of hotel, accommodation costs. If I were to go to say travel, this could be their flight numbers or ground transport. And each of the bits of information in these profile fields relate to this one particular artist. But of course, it's the information that we do then require for all artists. So, for example, we may have an artist bio field. There is only one profile field for artist bio, but it's populated by each contact with their own information. We have the same range of profile fields as we do form fields, and we can add new ones by going over to config, finding the appropriate area in our profile fields section. So let's say we want to take each artist t-shirt size. We can go into artist, we can add a new field, we can call this t-shirt size, and in this list here there are numbers, single selects, multis, dates, times, date of birth. Again, you have all the different field types in here that you could possibly want. In this case, I'm going to make this a single select option. Add that. We'll have small, medium, large, and there we go. We've now created a new set of profile fields which can be then saved against any of the contacts in the platform. So let's just go back to our artist here, go to profile fields. Now if we scroll to the bottom, we can see t-shirt size, and of course we can assign this to anybody. So let's just go and add columns so we can get it in the list view, and we'll add t-shirt size. Here we go, and we can just start assigning small, mediums and larges. This information is then something that you can search by and export at a later date. We do have a few extra options in our profile fields that we do not have on form fields, and I'll show you a couple of those now. One of which is on checkboxes, and this allows you to send an email to people as well. So you can use checkboxes quite simply as a tagging system. So here we could have a checkbox we'll put in as perhaps part of their process. So they've done stage 1, and we just want to be able to tag people and say, you know, we've done stage 1 of whichever process it might be, and then stage 2. So we've got a field called stage 1 with stage 1 and stage 2 in it, and you'll notice when I add these there's a template, optional template. So this allows you to then choose an email to be sent. So for example, if after stage 1 I want the guest list invite to be sent, and after stage 2 I would like the schedule to be sent, I can update that. And now if I go back to one of my artists, you can quite easily utilize these checkboxes without any of these email templates, and then have them just as tags that you can then search and export and assign to people. But if you assign a template to it, you can see here if I choose stage 1, save, there we go, that will have now also emailed 201 Dance Company. If I click into them, show correspondence, we can see that guest list invite has sent over to them as well. So you will find that checkboxes have that extra feature when used as a profile field. You don't have that currently on a checkbox in a form field, for example, as it's something you'd assign on the back end. Another example of a profile field that isn't on a form is our profile link. And this is interesting because a profile link will take one of our grid options and allow you to utilize that on a form. So a good example of this is if I go to our volunteers, you can see here we've got volunteer availability. Now this is a field that you'll find in our profile fields, and if I go edit, you'll see here it's date option grid. However, this does not exist on a form. You can't put a date option grid option on a form, but what you can do, the way these exist, is you choose one of these date option or quantity option grids. So let's use this artist availability here on the back end. And then if we want them to give us the availability rather than us select it for them, we can utilize a profile link on a form. And let me just go to one of these forms and show you how we do this. So let's go to our volunteer application form. You can see here availability. If I edit this, you'll see this is a profile link and it's linked to volunteer availability. So if you ever need to use one of the grids to take availability or take numbers off of somebody for against options, you can do this using a profile link field and linking it across, and just show you what that looks like on the form itself. Down here you can see this has pulled the same options that we have on our profile field and then has been selected by the user. Now this brings us all the way around to syncing your profile fields. Now syncing is, as I mentioned earlier, quite important in some scenarios, because you want some of this information, for example their availability, to live in their profile as well as the form. Now if we just go back and have a quick look at page 1 of our volunteer application form and our availability, we'll see over here that it says it is synced to volunteer availability. Now this means whatever they choose in these boxes is going to be put back into their profile in that data grid profile field. We can double check this by clicking into here and edit, field options, sync data to. Here we can just find volunteer availability. As I mentioned earlier, syncing is really useful in anything that you might need to mail merge, and it is often used across the platform in many ways, but it's not necessary to go overboard with it. For example, here we don't really need to sync have you volunteered with us before, or why would you like to volunteer. That's unlikely to be useful for us in the future. However, things like their volunteer type or their availability, are they first aid trained, this is the kind of information that we might end up wanting to use either in mail merges or searches later down the line. So all of these are synced, and they do sync to the same type of field as well. So do you have any first aid training is a radio select button, and we can see here it is synced into first aid trained, and first aid trained has to be the same field type. So actually if I pop over into our volunteer section, here we'll see first aid trained as a profile field is also a radio field. You can't be syncing radio fields into file uploads and file uploads into single selects. We do restrict you from doing that for the most part anyway. Now you may find that when you go to sync something up, the profile field doesn't already exist. Now you can add the custom profile field as we looked at earlier by coming into the section, adding the new option, and then going back to the form and back to the field and then doing it that way. There's a bit of a long way round though. So let's say, for example, we wanted to add how did you hear about volunteering for us as a sync into their profile, but we don't have a field for that. When I go into the field options, sync data to, there's an option at the top to add a new field. And then again, I just need to make sure that this matches up. So this was actually a checkbox, and I want this field to live under volunteers. There we go, we've successfully created that new field. We can save it, and that sync is now set up. It's also possible, if you are on one of the pro packages, to utilize fields and conditionals. So on a form, we can have a quick look at have you volunteered for us before. If yes, then please list your duties. So what we might want is this only to show if they've said yes. Now if I click into here and go to conditions, we can see we can set this up in here. We would like to say on the form field, have you volunteered for us before? If this is selected yes, then show the field that we're currently working on, which is list your duties. So conditionals are quite easy to set up. You can always find them under this tab. If they're enabled on your platform, you'll see this little conditions button, and that will enable you to start to get in and set those up. Just to show you what that looks like on the front end. So have you volunteered for us before is yes, and we know that that is going to trigger show my duties. So if we go to registrations, and I'll just edit David's one here again that we looked at earlier, and I'll come down to have you volunteered for us before, and if I'm going to choose yes, now we have the option to list your duties, and I can choose no, and that box will disappear. There's some other options on there as well. Let's just go back to the list your duties condition, and this time we'll just say if you volunteered before is selected no, then hide the field. And we can just see how this looks the other way around. So if we go down to the have you selected for us before, and this is selected no, nothing changes, and yes, it's going to show. So you can do it the other way around, but usually it's recommended to say if you volunteered for us before, if it's a yes, then that, but it doesn't really matter. You can take it apart and put it back together however you see fit for your particular workflow and use case. Finally, we'll look at some of the more advanced profile field options, and what we see when we go to profile fields and say artist or one of your categories in the back end in config. There's a few extra options here. So obviously if you have an existing field, earlier we created new ones, but if you wanted to update an extra option into here, you can utilize the options button to do that, or update any email templates that go out in the checkboxes. You can set up permissions on each field. Now these relate to your Festival Pro user types. These are obviously your esteemed work friends and colleagues who are logging into Festival Pro, and they will have a different type of user permission. Now the majority of people are on say organizer or config, but you can go as far say as limiting say what your artists see on a certain field. Say when schedules go out or something like that, you may want to hide certain fields from different user types. So this applies to your work colleagues in terms of say contractor, guest manager, sponsor manager, staff manager, that kind of thing, artist liaison. Or you may have certain fields that you restrict the access to an artist or a contractor, a driver or a crew. And over here we can see our options. So I can set say artist liaison for artist confirmed. They're going to want to see that, so it's set to all. You can set this over to none, which will not let them see it. View only, so they can't edit it. Search will allow it to come up in the search results, or they can add new things also to that option. Typically most people use either all to have it show or none to have it not show. They're the most typical options. And obviously this often happens say with the performance fee. Performance fee is something that you may want your artist to see but your artist liaison manager not to see. And you might notice here that stage venue to sound check is in a different color, and this is what we call a group in Festival Pro, and it's whenever we want to repeat a set of fields. So for example, if we only had one set of these, then performance, the main stage at a certain time, could only occur one time. An artist could only have one performance. So what we have here is a group, and at the bottom here you can see we have a group and ungroup option. And when we select this, it's going to allow you to drag a box around. So let's just take that stage group and we'll do an ungroup on it. Now if I refresh, you'll see that there's all these colors, and what this will have actually done is break parts of my artist calendars and platforms, because a bunch of these artists are on multiple performances. And if we view here now, we only have say the one performance, because it's not possible for them to have any more than one, because that's the way those fields are set up. So let's go back to profile fields and artists in here, and we're going to regroup those. So I can come down here, choose the group, we'll go back to stage venue, and it was down to the sound check. And here we can set the maximum number of performances someone might have. You might have volunteer shifts, for example, in a group, and you want to be able to add more volunteer shifts. You can just regroup them and up this number. So I'm going to say each artist is going to probably have a maximum of 30 performances. And now we'll see that they have all gone back to the same color. And if we just go back again to that artist, 201 Dance Company, and we'll now see that we have multiple performances here. They've all come back because we've regrouped the fields. 1, 2, 3. And how that looks actually in the artist itself, if I edit their profile and we come in here, we can see we can remove the group, but if we were to add another down the bottom here, that's going to give another group of those same fields here. So we can now add, say, another performance date on another time slot. So that was a quick overview of profile fields. You'll find more information in the documentation, but hopefully that gives you a bit of a starting point to get going. The important things to note are the differences between form fields and profile fields, in so much that information that you collect on a form may only live here in the form, and that's fine, you can get to it, you can export it, you can search it on the form itself, but you may want some of that to live in the profile, and that's where you have profile fields which are attached to the artist themselves. Go here to the artist and we see all the list of those, and you can create your own profile fields in config, coming into here, selecting your profile field and setting that up in here. This is the same place you can set your permissions for your different users, and then you know about syncing information across. So if you have something that you're collecting off of an artist, such as their biography or something, that you also want to live in a profile field, you can sync those things over like that. And you can also put things in groups if you want multiples of, or collect information alongside. So here we have the vehicle holder name, it's in a group with vehicle registration, because we want to collect those things together in a group, and they may happen multiple times, they may have multiple vehicles. So I hope this video has been informational and helpful, and if you need anything else, please don't hesitate to reach out and give us a shout on the support system.